Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and begin. I said 35 minutes after, but it's 34 minutes. We'll go ahead and start. We'll just catch our latecomers up. All right, everyone. So thank you all for making it here. Today is a encore presentation. Last week, our team presented at the Motor City Casino. We presented at the CASA Michigan State Conference. Our specific topic was strategies for giving voice and supporting Black boys in K-12. If you look there is a picture of us right after the presentation. So that's our team. What I'd like to draw your attention to more importantly is if you look at the particular picture that's up, in the background, you see 3 different pictures of us that kind of emphasizes why this presentation is so important to us. Each one of us, myself, Horace, and Contessa, we are all parents of Black boys. In fact, I think I heard that one of those Black boys is on here. Is that true? Oh, there we go. I see a son there. But in the case of my 2 co-presenters, they are actually grandparents of Black boys as well. So the topic that we're going to present on is very, very important to us. And since we're all educators as well, crucial. So just kind of wanted to set up our presentation that way. Also, I want to emphasize that when we presented this in person last week, we only had 70 minutes, but we scheduled 90 minutes so we could do a deep dive. Also, I'd like to add that we've done this presentation 3 times in person this year across the nation. We've done it in Columbus, Atlanta, and we did it in Ohio as well. And then last week we did it in Michigan. However, Michigan is the first time that we did a slight adjustment. Each time we like to change our presentation around just a little bit to kind of reflect what is going on contemporarily. So this particular time, we decided to add an immigrant element. If you remember during last year's, I'm going to use the term political unrest, there was a lot of attention drawn to our foreign-born Black populations. And so actually when we presented in both Atlanta and Ohio State, folks talked to me afterwards and they said, hey, what about the Black boys that aren't born here? They're experiencing the same thing, but you didn't talk about them. So I kept it in the back of my head, said, the next time we present, we'll address that. However, at the time, myself and Horace, we were the primary presenters. We didn't have that capability organically. While we have supported ELs, English language learners, we didn't have the expertise. So we didn't feel it was the appropriate time to debut that presentation. However, through our travels and our presentations, we acquired a new team member, Mrs. Contessa Brady, who is an ESL teacher, English as a second language. And she works with this population. And she also is coming from out of state where I believe her state actually has the second largest concentration of immigrants and English language learners. So she deals with this population. So we felt that this particular presentation, instead of focusing on affinity groups for adults, this particular time we would add in English language learners, the students. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start our presentation in earnest. So let's just start a little bit by talking about what our company does. As I said earlier, my name is Sean Fisher, and I'm proud CEO and owner of the Fisher Educational Consulting Group. And I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues, Horace Stone Jr. and Mrs. Contessa Brady. Also, we have our instructional designer, Dr. Nikita Jones, there as well. And I'd like to just take a few moments to share what we do and talk about our company.
Hello and welcome. At Sean Fisher Education Consulting, we're on a mission to improve schools, educators, and students through expert-driven solutions that lead to real results. As a veteran-owned firm, we specialize in professional development tailored to K-12 schools, districts, and higher education. Our goal is to equip educators and school leaders with the strategies and tools they need to succeed. We provide hands-on training and coaching to help teachers and school leaders grow in their roles. Our team works closely with educators to develop leadership skills and improve student instruction and classroom instructions. We also assist schools in designing effective curriculum and integrating STEAM programs to enhance student learning. Using assessment tools and data analysis, we guide schools in making informed decisions that improve student performance. We help implement structured academic and social systems, ensuring that students receive the resources they need to succeed. When you partner with us, you will receive access to a dedicated team committed to helping your educators thrive and your students excel. Visit us at Sean Fisher Education Consulting to learn more. Enjoy the training.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And that was our wonderful Chief Training Officer, Dr. Nikita Jones, here with us. Now that you know a little bit about us as a team, let's break it down individually. So we'll start with our individual introductions. Horace, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. My name is Horace E. Stone Jr., a proud Wayne County CASA volunteer and a 20-year educational professional. And today my focus will be preteen and grades K-5 lens. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Sean Fisher, again, proud CEO and owner of the Fisher Educational Consulting Group. Also, I am a proud Wayne County CASA volunteer, a 20-plus year education professional, and my focus will be on grades 6 through 12, the young men's perspective. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Contessa Brady here. I'll be discussing the special populations lens. I am a court-appointed special advocate for Dallas County, and I have over a decade of experience teaching middle school students, specifically students with special needs and multilingual learners. I also teach reading and writing for 6th graders, and I handle a caseload of students to support their education plans. I have a new grandbaby as well, so I'm pretty busy. So I just wanted to say good evening to everyone.
And she survived our cold weather in Michigan last week. All right. So with that being said, we've told you about our team as a whole. We've broken down who we are individually. What we'd like to learn now is just kind of take a survey of who we have in the audience. So we'd like to do a little waterfall activity where we're going to play the Jeopardy song. And while it's playing, we're going to ask you to drop a few pieces of information about yourself into the chat. Primarily your name, your occupation, state, and anything else you want to share. The only thing that we ask is that you wait until the Jeopardy song ends before you hit send. That'll cause all the information kind of rainfall down. Any questions on the directions? Quick check for understanding. Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead. Okay, let's see who we have here. There it is coming across. Nikita Jones, let us know who you are. Thank you. My name is Rush Russell. I am a human. I'm a human capital consulting grad student. Okay. Eric Schultz, Douglas County. So much. Oh, okay, there we go. Professional learning specialist. Okay, we have 1 state, 2 states, 3, 4. 5. Okay, we have 5 states represented. All right, there we go. Okay, perfect. So I'll take over right here. Let's just talk about what we're going to focus on today. As we said earlier, we'll be covering the boys' perspective, the English language learner's perspective, and a young men's perspective. I won't bore you by reading the specific learning objectives or goals for the overall presentation. You can read those yourself, but just understand that these are the topics that we'll be covering for the entire presentation. Pay close attention because we will give you a quiz at the end. Now, the educator in me says that I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't take time to build a little bit of common understanding in language. So today we're going to focus on the main strategy that we'll be identifying as let's try that a different way. The main strategy that we will be identifying to use to support our Black boys and give them voice will be affinity groups. So before we begin, let's build a common understanding about what affinity groups are. There may be, you may think you know what affinity groups are, but I want to establish a common understanding today. So I'm going to play a 1 minute, 10-second video just to establish a baseline understanding to level set for all of us.
What are affinity groups and how do they help? Have you ever wondered how students can come together to support each other in high school? One way they do this is through affinity groups. So, what exactly are affinity groups and how do they help students thrive? Affinity groups are gatherings of individuals who share a common identity, interest, or experience. This could include aspects like race, ethnicity, gender, or cultural background. In a high school environment, these groups create safe spaces where students can connect with others who understand their experiences. This sense of belonging is essential for emotional well-being and academic success. When students feel valued and included, they are more likely to engage positively in their school community. Affinity groups also play a vital role in promoting inclusivity and respect. They offer a platform for students to express themselves freely and explore their identities. By connecting with peers who share similar backgrounds, students can reduce feelings of isolation and build social support networks. Another important aspect of affinity groups is cultural awareness. These groups expose students to diverse perspectives in a supportive setting. This exposure helps students develop respect for different cultures and backgrounds, which strengthens the overall school community. Additionally, affinity groups provide leadership opportunities. Students can take on roles that help them develop skills like decision-making and problem-solving. These skills are not only useful in school but also in their future endeavors.
You're on mute, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. I told myself I wouldn't do that. Still a little hangover from COVID, right? We can't hear you. So one caveat that I would add for this video is that these strategies are more than effective for just high school, right? Middle school, elementary, all students can benefit from these strategies. All students need to be empowered and have a space where they can be heard, and also their very existence can be validated. Any questions there? So a couple things before we go any further. Since we have a smaller group, this will be totally interactive. So feel free to, if you have a question that's just burning and you don't want to put it in the chat, feel free to come off mute and ask your question. Thank you. At this time, I will transition over to our first presenter, Mr. Horace E. Stone, and he'll take it from here.
Well, once again, good evening, everybody, and it's good to see all of you that are in attendance on today. My session is in session 1, empowering Black boys to navigate the elementary years, grades K-5. And so the educator in me wants to make sure that everybody knows the learning objectives, empowering Black boys to navigate the elementary years, grades K-5. In this session, Attendees will learn strategies for building healthy masculinity, overcoming harmful stereotypes for Black boys, learn resiliency, goal setting, and leadership skills for Black boys, and learn college career readiness skills for Black boys. And I wanted to take a picture. I wanted you to take a look at those 4 pictures in the corner. Take a look at Alabama State. I want to focus on that for a minute because we're going to tie back into that later on so you can kind of get an understanding and a feel of what we're trying to do, and not trying to do, but what we are going to do with our K-5 scholars. So at this time, before we go any further, I want to tap into your prior knowledge a little bit. What do you already know about affinity classrooms? We'll let the music play, and after the music plays, please give us some responses, and you can just openly speak as opposed to putting it in the chat, since we are a kind of a closed group. Here we go. So what do we know about affinity groups? Does anybody want to speak right now?
This is Pam Winellis. I
Okay.
am not familiar with affinity groups at all.
Okay.
Part of the reason I took this, I'm in a Title I school, as well as being a CASA, Wayne County CASA. So I thought I could bring this not only to my school, but also to my CASA work.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And as we move further, you'll be able to get a deeper dive, and you'll be able to get a greater understanding. Thank you, Ms. Winellis. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm with Pam, and I don't know about affinity groups in classrooms. I guess I thought of it more in like in a flex period, like in an advisement period situation, but I'm excited to learn more.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Anybody else?
Yeah, I thought something similar. I had never heard of affinity classrooms, but in the school setting, but I have heard of affinity groups. Like, I thought that they were like an extracurricular type of thing. I know I took a course in undergrad called Psychology of Sexual Orientation. And we talked a lot about gay straight alliances as like an affinity group that was established by a lot of schools, and they had pretty interesting outcomes. I know that those aren't super common these days with administration changes and more impact on the Department of Education and things, but that's probably the main affinity group I've heard of.
Okay. I appreciate that. Anyone else? Okay, we're moving right along. So before we get any further, I wanted to make sure to let you know that we're tying today into not only affinity groups, but we also tying it into CASA. It's very important both ways. You know, as an educator.
Mr. Stone, can I interject, please?
Yes.
Hey, really quickly, everyone, and this is my fault. I'm sorry. I totally forgot that there were folks that are here that are not necessarily part of the CASA program. So let me just take a moment to say what CASA is, because we didn't cover that. We actually had the director for the county. She was supposed to attend, but something came up, so she didn't have a chance to explain. So I kind of missed that part because it wasn't part of my part of the presentation, but let me cover that. So everyone, there is a national program called CASA, C-A-S-A, which stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. It's a national program where the juvenile courts recruit professional, responsible adults to be the voice in the court and the advocate for children. So we all are members of this particular program. We all have been sworn in our various court districts. We have been signed caseloads, and last week we presented in person at the state conference. There were folks that it was standing room only in our presentation. There were folks that couldn't make it, so they asked us to do an encore presentation. We agreed to do it. The only caveat was that we asked, could we invite folks that just needed this information in general? So what you're going to hear is information geared towards child advocates, but we all, in one way or another, are child advocates. If we're educators, we're former educators, we're retired, we are advocates, so we can use this information. So Mr. Stone is going to be presenting general information, but at the end, he will roll it into how it can support you as a child advocate. Most of us are educators in some way or another, and you are a mandatory reporter, so you are an advocate whether you think you are or not. So this information will help you. Mr. Stone, I apologize for interjecting. I just wanted to set that understanding so that I wanted to frame this presentation, the information that they're receiving.
No problem, Mr. Fisher, and greatly appreciate it. And once again, as Mr. Fisher has already stated, we will be talking about CASA, but we also will be talking about how affinity groups will tie into this perspective. I want you to take a look at the challenges faced. We have the Black students that are homeless in the state of Michigan in 2019. We're at 8%. The higher increases of chronic absenteeism in schools that all of us know from COVID-19 and after COVID-19 have increased from 2022 to 2023. If we look at the third bullet where it talks about the Black boys make up 19% of ECE, which is early childhood education, pre-K 3, but yet make up 47% of out of school suspensions. If we look at where the last bullet where it talks about as of 2023, which is the most recent data, Black youth were 5.6 times as likely to be placed or detained or committed in a juvenile facility. And I want you to begin I'm taking my time with this slide because I really want you to understand that our students, even before they get started, they have 8% that are homeless, that are going through struggles. We begin to see that, then we understand why the absentee rate is high. But more importantly, our kids between K through third grade are struggling and are suspended at such a high rate. At 47%, they're suspended. But more importantly, we're talking about 5.6 times more likely. So if we put this in perspective, 500% more times more likely to be suspended out of school than white peers. So our children are losing before they even get started. Why do elementary age Black boys need Michigan CASA? And so when we look at these data points, I wanted to focus on three. Take a look at number one, public perception of Black boys as underachievers, lazy, lacking intelligence, and negative stereotypes are always disruptive in the classroom. But then if we look at bullet point 2, the Black boys are at a higher risk of suicide attempts with more lethal means compared to Black girls. And so when we talk about more lethal means, they're successful, right? So not only are they attempting to kill themselves, but they're also doing it. And then if you look at bullet 3, where it says the suicide rate among Black boys and Black adolescents has increased by 144% from 2007 to 2020. And so the reason why Michigan CASA is important is because we want to form wraparound services to be able to support our youth and to be able to keep them out of these circumstances. But also when we talk about affinity groups, it's because we're building relationships with our young people to be able to come together, to be able to support one another. What we've learned in education is when our young people are able to communicate with each other, they're even more effective than even the educators in the room. That's why we have these affinity groups. So how do classroom affinity groups help Black boys thrive? And so it's a couple of bullet points I wanted to take a look at. The first one is develop a sense of belonging. If we look at the fifth bullet point where it talks about develop healthy masculinity and overcome harmful stereotypes. And then the last bullet point where it says build college and career readiness pathways. Take a look at the pictures on the side. If we look at that first picture, you'll see young men that are working right now, and you say, oh, wow, these kids are on task. They're doing just what they're supposed to do. The reality is these young men are fourth grade students who were in my classroom who were considered to be district rejects. They had a lot of suspensions. A lot of them were in and out of school. Some of the children were recommended for some types of treatments out of school and things of that nature. And when it came down, and this is an all male classroom, all boy classroom. And so what has happened is the students were able to come together. They were able to work together, but they were also able to lean on each other for support. So these very kids that were being suspended are the very ones that are sitting here performing right now. And I want you to look at the picture below the top picture, and you'll see all of these different people that are in the room while I'm teaching. Well, the reason for that is the parents couldn't believe that their children were still in school and they weren't being suspended. There weren't bad calls being sent home. And, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So all of these people came in because they just couldn't believe it. And that's where the true success starts. So if we're moving forward with our affinity groups and things of that nature, then one of the things that we have to be able to talk about is restorative practice and why it's important as far as tying into our classrooms and supporting our youngsters. I want you to just listen to this video right quick, and you'll be able to get an understanding for why restorative practices is needed in our classrooms.
But it's all about power and how power is allocated.
Thank you, Darren. Dr. Gilbert, what is restorative justice?
Thank you for the question. I'll begin this definition by quoting Dewana Nicole, who's the executive director for the Restorative Justice Partnership, who says that if I have a relationship with you, I'm less likely to harm you. And restorative justice is the indigenous philosophy that's focused in on relationship building and building community. It is the philosophy that if I have this relationship with you, I'm less likely to harm you. But in the event that harm occurs, we can create a space that is suitable for us to work on this harm and move to restore ourselves into back and towards the community. So restorative justice is about relationships.
So
So when we move to the last part of this presentation, as far as the K-5 lens, it's a couple things that I wanted to focus on, because I know that Russell, you had some questions and you were curious, and so were some of the other attendees. One of the things is procedural strategies for creating affinity classrooms. And here are a couple key action steps. One is I want you to review the state law. Now, in Michigan, according to section 37.2404A, schools are permitted to establish single gender classes, schools, or programs under specific sections of the revised school code 1976 PA 451 MCL 380.475 3801146. The definitions for the school districts and related entities are provided in MCL 380.1 to 380.1852. I read all that because I wanted you to know that this was part of the state law. So one of the things you want to look at if you're trying to form a affinity group in your school or in your school district, you first want to consult the state law. The next thing is you want to seek, if you are working in education, you want to be able to seek union engagement. You want to make sure that you want to have an opportunity to communicate with your union to see what union bylaws are as far as being able to work to form that affinity group. And lastly, you would like to have sponsorship. So sponsorship within the school building is being able to contact your counselor, being able to contact the lead teacher and the school administrator. One of the reasons is because when you begin to have these people on your side, forming those affinity groups is not difficult. But more importantly, you can leapfrog some obstacles that might come. But last but not least, I wanted to target and go back to the Alabama State picture. And that is, you want to adopt a culturally responsive theme. In order for our children, our babies to be able to be successful, we have to give them something to strive for. Mm-hmm. And so we want to make sure that our babies are able to strive to get to university or college by adopting a HBCU theme or a culturally responsive theme that they can be able to tie into their success. At this time, I want to introduce an amazing, outstanding, intelligent, educated person by way of Dallas, who is going to be able to give us clarity and give us knowledge in the next school base and next transition. And this person is by the name of Contessa C. Brady. Miss Brady.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Mr. Stone. So appreciate you. All right, so that's me featured there last week at the Michigan CASA Conference. And it was, as you can see, it was a packed house. I had a great time presenting this material. So nice job adding that picture there, Mr. Fisher. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So in my session, I'm going to focus on how we empower those Black boys who are English language learners and also newcomers, and how we can help them to be academically successful using these same affinity classrooms. You'll see me featured there in the background in one of my classrooms. That's one of my English language learners sitting there, and he was doing his thing. And so I wanted to just kind of just point out that that is the focus of my session. And in true fashion, as an educator, we definitely always want to discuss those learning objectives, what we want y'all to learn from what I'll be discussing today. So in my session, I want you to recognize and address those language barriers that English language learners and newcomers often have to deal with. We're going to ensure that equitable access to those services and opportunities for these boys. We'll talk about the numerous assets and value that they bring to our communities. We're going to talk about how we can support these specific newcomer subgroups. We'll promote those healthy identity development things. And we'll talk about how we can build those skills for long-term success, specifically future-ready skills. And again, there in the background, that's me doing my thing with my English language learner classroom. All right.
Ms. Brady, while you're transitioning,
Yeah.
may I say something really quickly?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Thank you. So everyone, one of the reasons that we asked Mrs. Brady to integrate this portion, because we all know about what American-born Black children are dealing with. It's been highlighted in depth, right? But what we haven't thought about is our foreign-born Black population. So just by sheer appearance, they experience a lot of the things that our American-born Black boys experience. But also now you add xenophobia, which we recently heard about with the, various rumors that floated around about certain populations. But then also those students may as well have a language barrier. So if you add that folks on the outside externally, because of xenophobia, have issues with them, and then internally they have language barriers, it adds a whole new area of concerns and deficits to be overcome. So we thought about, and no one talks about them, right? When we say immigrants, we think of anybody but our Black immigrants. So we thought that this would be an ideal time to highlight the experiences they're having. And we happen to have a subject matter expert on our team. So we asked her to take this on. I'll turn it back over to you, Contessa. I just wanted to kind of frame the learning.
Absolutely. So at this time, I'm always interested to know what you know about this particular subgroup, because I've spent over a decade working with these children. So I'm interested to know, what do you know? What's your knowledge or previous experiences with multilingual classrooms, if any at all? But just wait for the song to conclude before you sharing your thoughts. And again, we can just say it out loud because this is a small group. All right, here we go. All right, everybody. Does anybody want to chime in and tell me what their experiences are with our ELLs? Anyone?
Before being a teacher coach at my school, I was one of the 2 English language development teachers, ELD teachers. So a lot of experience with that part. Now I keep my thumb on the pulse of it by teaching classes for the union for teachers to get there. In Colorado, you have to get a 45-hour ELD certification if you teach a core content elementary or middle school. Core content in high school, or if you're an elementary or middle school teacher. And so I run that 45-hour class to do that. So it's
nice.
Really, really fun. I love it.
Nice. Wonderful experiences there. Anyone else? Okay.
I just have experience having ESL children in my classroom, excuse me, who come with no English language, no language. The parents do not speak English. So on top of trying to educate them in the English language, you're trying to teach them English language as they're trying to learn the curriculum.
Definitely, definitely some challenges you're facing there, Pam, I'm certain. And so in my session, I'll just kind of elaborate on things that we can do to support these boys in your classroom. So, but I know that it can be certainly challenging when they're new because they don't know any English. So let's keep going. So why do Black boy English language learners and newcomers need Michigan CASA? And it's largely because of those challenges that they face. I'm going to just kind of outline and summarize just a few of these points here, but I certainly want to point out the numbers here. Those first two bullet points. So there's over 8,000 African immigrants in the Grand Rapids area. And specifically in Metro Detroit, there's an estimated 14,000 African immigrants in 2019, which grew to upwards of more than 17,000 in the Detroit, Warren, and Dearborn area by 2022. So it's 2025. So I just want to point out the fact that the numbers of English language learners that we're seeing in the classroom is astronomical. And so having experienced educators in the classroom who understand how to support these boys is getting even more crucial. I also want to discuss as well that there's a growing and diverse population of children in Michigan as a whole. Thousands of these African immigrants have dual languages. They have multiple languages that they speak. And many of them, as you heard Mr. Stone talking about, many of them are facing challenges such as homelessness. They're experiencing challenges such as poverty. And so in knowing this, those disproportionate challenges, that's why we as CASA volunteers are so crucial in making sure that we're providing that safety net to ensure their well-being. Okay. We have a raised hand. All right. Sorry, I went too far. Is there a question?
Yeah, just a add in. Everyone, one thing that we wanted to say is that majority populations very statistically are very often of detriment to minority statistics because they'll blot out the problem. So very often we focus on our largest city, which is Detroit, and our second largest city, which is Grand Rapids. But there are some smaller cities and areas that have isolated populations of our Black immigrants. So like, for instance, Coldwater just went out. Think about that city only has about, I think it may have 10,000 people total, but it has 400 to 500 Haitian immigrants there, concentrated in one place. I've had the opportunity to speak to that superintendent, and he expressed the need that those boys there have for support because, first of all, it's a very rural area, and they stand out. Like, no one there has even seen Black folks, let alone Black folks who speak a different language. So they're like freaking out. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind to look in your smaller areas, because sometimes our large metro areas can mask our smaller populations. So kind of go to your census or your state census board and look up that information and try to identify, because there may be some intersection between where those populations are at and where CASAs or advocates are serving. So you kind of want to know what's in your field. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fisher, for adding that. And in continuing the discussion about the challenges that these boys face, I want to discuss the difference between disproportionate impact versus disparate impact. The first thing I'm going to do is point your attention to the graphic there. There you'll see Lady Justice. She is balancing, or seemingly balancing, the scales, and she's wearing a blindfold. which is to symbolize that there's no prejudices, there's no biases or favoritism that impacts these boys. But in the situation that we're seeing with our English language learners and our newcomers, it's not balanced because of the many challenges that they face. So we see this in the ways of overrepresentation as well as underrepresentation. And so I'm just going to elaborate on the overrepresentation first. You heard Mr. Fisher say that the language barriers, that is going to oftentimes mask or look like a learning disability, when oftentimes these boys simply need language support. And then many times I see that they're misidentified as being or needing special education services when they were more than likely gifted and talented in their first language, but we're identifying them as needing special education services over here because they have that language barrier. So these are the types of challenges that they face, in addition to the poverty and the homelessness. And that's what makes things so disproportionate. We also see the underrepresentation. I often see this as well. In those gifted and talented classrooms, the testing, it's not culturally responsive for them. So what happens is oftentimes the test is not in a way that's such that they can have the time that they need to process the data. They're not making those connections that these boys may or may not be familiar with. So oftentimes we may not even see English language learners or newcomers in gifted and talented classrooms just because of that. So I just wanted to just make mention of the fact that, in adding on to what Mr. Fisher said, that they're facing all the same challenges as other Black boys, but they're being hit with more because of those language barriers. All right. Cara, you have a question.
Yeah. When you say like overrepresentation, underrepresentation, are those disparate or disproportionate, or are those like 4 different categories that you just went through?
So disparate is, I'll just go back to the slide, then we'll just go back so that I can just kind of read that. So disparate impact, that's when a policy or practice is supposed to be neutral, but it ends up harming a certain group of people. Disproportionality has to do with numbers. So for instance, because there's language barriers for these ELLs, oftentimes we see a lot more of them in special education classrooms when we don't need to. Or on the other side of it, we might see an underrepresentation of them in gifted and talented classrooms because, again, of a language barrier. So the numbers are off. So that causes disproportionality. Neither of these are intended to harm these boys, but because of the challenges, that's what it becomes. So
that does help. Would you consider, like, we have a pattern at my school that I kind of want to fight, but when we get students that come from other countries that don't have very much English, especially if they're boys, the counselors will tend to put them like into a PE class, right? And I understand that it's language lighter, but they could be in a music class and they could be in an art class. And would that align with these?
Yeah, absolutely. Because oftentimes it's a situation where they don't have a learning disability in their first language. So yeah, we're treating them as if they do because of a language, instead of giving them the language supports that they need, giving them those tests that maybe bringing someone in who speaks the language, or providing assessments that they understand, that might close the gaps and kind of break down those barriers for them. So yeah, absolutely. I see it oftentimes too, because the schools sometimes just don't know how to handle this particular subgroup. So they, just to make things easier, they'll put them in those classes or classify them as special education when oftentimes they're not, and they just need language support. I hope that answered your question.
And Kara, it also could be the intersection of gender discrimination,
Mhm.
because there's a reason why there may be a reason why they're not being placed in music. They're being put in PE, whereas if it was an immigrant girl, they might put her in music. So, you know, let's not, blank out on that part as well, that could be part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that. All right. So what's the solution? How do the English language learner and newcomer affinity classrooms help our Black boys thrive? So I want to just first point out who these newcomers are. Who am I talking about when I say newcomers? I'm talking about these English language learners. They've recently arrived in the US, so they're new to the US. They bring those rich experiences, the language, the culture, the customs, the traditions, the really, really good food. And some examples of these boys might be, you might see the immigrant populations or African populations in metropolitan Detroit and the greater Grand Rapids area. And you might see the Caribbean and Haitian populations in Coldwater. So these are the examples of the newcomers that I'm talking about today. Ways that we can help them, ways that affinity classrooms can help these immigrant Black boys is, again, providing those culturally responsive assessments. I know that's something that a lot of folks just kind of throw that word around willy-nilly, but it is something that you have to be intentional about, because we know that oftentimes our minority versus our majority counterparts learn different. Oftentimes, the majority, they can learn individually, and they can learn in a way that doesn't require social interaction. Oftentimes, our boys that are coming from Africa and places like Haiti and the Dominican Republic, oftentimes these boys need, the way that they learn is in groups or by talking or by interacting. And so we can avoid that overrepresentation by, again, that's the way that you provide culturally responsive assessments. Give them options, make it connect to the real world. These are all ways that we can stop that overrepresentation of special education students having English language learners in there when they don't need to be. We can develop those healthy masculinity and overcoming harmful stereotypes. We can help them to build resiliency skills by helping them with those executive functioning skills like goal setting. And then finally, building those career readiness pathways. I like to call it future ready skills. Those are all the things that helps these Black boys to be successful in the real world. So these are just a few ways that we can provide solutions for them to be successful in their new communities. All right.
Contessa, before
Yes.
you introduce Mr. Fisher, can I say one thing?
Sure, absolutely.
One thing that we also have to remember, especially with these with this group of learners that are coming from various places, they're settling in areas, industrial areas that probably you would not expect. Just like if we look at Coldwater, Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, areas like Detroit, you're going to get an influx of these different groups. Why? Because industry is there, big business is there. And so with that being said, this is where this training, this newcomer training, is going to really have to have a huge focus. Contessa, go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for adding that, Horace. All right. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Sean Fisher. He is a valued member of our team, and he is very well known for his commitment to student success. Sean?
Hey, thank you so much, Contessa. I appreciate the warm introduction. I promise next time we do this, I am moving to the beginning. It is so hard to go after these two. They are phenomenal presenters. They raise the bar so high, and then I feel like I slightly disappoint folks. So the next time we do this, I think we're scheduled to do it in Atlanta coming up here soon. I am going to move myself to the front. So you all can, I can lower the bar for you all. But anyway, again, thank you, Contessa. Just a reminder, everyone, my name is Sean Fisher, proud CEO and owner of the Fisher Educational Consulting Group. And much like Contessa said, I'll go ahead and just discuss this picture really quickly. So this is a collage from our presentation. Excuse me, everyone. Last week, we presented at Motor City Casino for the CASA State Conference. And as you can see, as Contessa highlighted, it was a full house. We had standing room, so we had to do this encore virtual presentation. Phenomenal. So what I'll be covering today is I'll be covering how to support our Teen Kings grades 6 through 12. Okay. So as my two colleagues before me said, I would be remiss in my duties as a teacher if I did not highlight the learning objectives for my particular session. So let's talk about them. In this session, attendees will learn the importance of developing positive identity and fostering a positive self-esteem. Also, they will learn to build self-confidence and cultural pride, best practices for academic enrichment, and disciplinary support. So much like my colleagues, if you look to the right, I'm going to explain this picture. Part of the reason that we chose to integrate pictures is to show you all that we are practitioners. So we are not talking about something that we read or heard about. These are actually strategies that we use daily. So as many of you know, I was a high school assistant principal and a middle school principal for almost 10 years. So this is a high school prom, and these are my seniors. Again, I always tell folks that we didn't plan for this picture to be stair-step. That's just kind of where I fit in at my height-wise. And it's funny because I bumped into a couple of these kids. They're almost 30 years old. I think actually some of them are 30 now. They're even taller than me now, so that's crazy. I just kind of wanted to highlight that particular picture. Love these boys. So I'm a parent of 3 Black boys, and I've run programs supporting Black boys, and they just naturally gravitate towards me because they have to be able to see themselves in someone and someone positive. So we just wanted to highlight that. And again, all 3 of us are parents of Black boys. And again, I think in some cases, yeah, like I said before, my 2 colleagues are actually grandparents of Black boys. So this is real for us, y'all. This is real for us. All right, so in my particular presentation, the format that I'll use is I'll highlight the challenges faced. I'll go over 3 slides highlighting the challenges that are faced, and that'll help us identify why Michigan CASA and child advocates are needed. Then once we're done with that, I'll identify a few solutions for those problems that we identified, and then I'll talk about the technical how do we implement these solutions. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start. Why do teen-age Black boys need Michigan CASA? Let's talk about those challenges faced. I won't go over all of them, but I just want to cherry pick a few. So first and foremost, Black youth in Michigan are 5.1 times more likely to be detained or committed than white youth. So let's talk about that 5.1 times. What that actually translates into is they have a 510% higher chance of being committed, detained, or arrested than their white youth. A 510%. Think about that. That's half of 1,000. Like they have half of 1,000% more chance of getting detained or arrested. Imagine if any place that you walk into, you had a 510% higher chance of getting in trouble. And on top of that, you represent a smaller population. So think about that fact. So it's actually not really, when you think about that, it's more like 700%. Because if the Black population in a school is 10 to 25%, and the majority is 70%, but that 25% has a 500% higher chance. Think about it, right? So just kind of wanted to bring that up. Also, children of color are disproportionately placed in child caring institutions and have a longer length of stay. So us as sworn in officers of the court, us as educators and advocates, we have to be mindful of that, because like 3 of us have caseloads on the court's caseload. And I know for sure my kids are in the foster system. And so I think about when they say they're going to have a longer stay, I think about I have 2 boys. Matter of fact, I have 2 Black boys on my caseload. So when I think about them as 5 and 8-year-olds having a longer stay, that means that they'll be in the system until they're like 18, till they age out, right? And that's not what we want. We want reunification. So those are just a few things that I think about. And last but not least, I want to point out poverty. So in 2023, 1 in 4 Black boys, actually, let me back up some. Southeast Michigan, which is Metro Detroit area, has the highest concentration of poverty for Black folks in the entire state of Michigan. 1 out of 4 Black children live in poverty, as opposed to their white and Asian counterparts who have the lowest rate of poverty, which is 1 out of 10. So we all know that when you're in a place that's impoverished, typically it intersects with violence and also a lack of resources. Those are 2 things that we don't want to ever intersect, right? A lack of resources and high crime or high violence neighborhoods, but that's where they exist. And then on top of that, we ask them to be good students. How, right? So the next thing I want to talk about, while I'm speaking about these other challenges faced, look at this diagram to your right. This talks about the school to prison pipeline, and it kind of talks about how students are monetized and incentivized to go into the prison or juvenile system, even if they've been deemed as having an IEP or having a special need. They're still punished for those very disabilities they have. So let's talk about our challenges faced. Biggest one, limited access to positive role models for guidance and inspiration. Part of the reason is because the role models they would have preceded them in experiencing the same issues that they experienced. So they're not a positive role model, but they're kind of a truthful role model of where the system is going to cause you to go if we can't disrupt it. So that's just something to think about. Also, as my colleague Contessa said earlier, boys are more likely to experience academic struggles, discipline problems, and high dropout rates. I will add a caveat to what she said. She spoke about different cultural learning styles. Like, America is more Eurocentric in its learning style, which is very individualized, whereas the rest of the world is more group oriented. I had the pleasure of living in Asia for 3 years. Everything is very group oriented, very similar in African cultures. But the other thing that I would add is that the school systems in some cases just don't work for our Black boys because they have certain discriminations built into them, right? So there's a reason why, even though we have a smaller population, like Mr. Stone said, in preschool, we occupy, Black students are 19% of the preschool population, but they represent 47% of the preschool suspensions or expulsions. Preschool and expulsion and suspension should never even be in the same sentence. Think about that. So that's, but let alone half of those kids are being expelled or suspended. So there's fundamentally something wrong with the system when it suspends a small, I mean, just mathematically, if I had 10 Black balls and 90 white balls, if I threw a penny or something into that group of balls, it has a higher probability of hitting a white ball than a Black ball. But if it hits the Black balls 50% of the time more, right? Everybody get that? Mathematically, it means something's wrong with the system. So it's not just that it's culturally out of alignment with the cultures that we're trying to teach, it's also just dysfunctional. So we have to examine what's going on. So that's where we as CASA, court appointed special advocates, or us as teachers, or us just as responsible, caring adults, we can advocate for these boys and disrupt that pattern, right? We could say, hey, we could be that voice in the IEP meeting, the family time meeting, in the child study team meeting. We could be that voice that says, hey, does anybody think it's odd that out of 34 kids, this one black kid he's the one that keeps getting suspended? And sometimes I see Mr. Stone. Sometimes when folks ask those questions, then it kind of brings it to the forefront. It makes people it holds a mirror up and they say, oh yeah, there might be something wrong with the system. Mr. Stone, you have a question. Go ahead.
So with this the school to prison pipeline, could this be contributed to the adultification of our children, along with even the acts that was done with Tamir Rice?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually going to address that in depth. I am guilty as charged, and I know in Michigan this is a curse word, but I am a native Ohioan, born and raised in Cleveland, guilty as charged. And I say that the relevance of that is, I think I saw somebody's bio. One of you went to University of Michigan, so I know that probably really struck home for one of you. But the reason why I raised my hometown is because that's where Tamir Rice was from, and that's where he was killed. So we are going to address that, and that speaks to our last bullet, where exposure to violence and crime can hinder their focus and well-being. Imagine trying to score high, be exemplary in your education when there's violence, there's gunshots, there's different things going on just outside of your door, right? So just something to think about. These are all things that our Black boys are experiencing at a higher level than, oh, thank you, Russell, than their white counterparts. So what I want to do here is, I spent the first 2 slides just telling you about my research and my experiences and the things that I've observed anecdotally. Because remember, I told you that I would be sharing this information from a practitioner's perspective. Now you've heard my words. I want you to hear the boys' words, to hear what they actually think about what's going on. So we'll play maybe a minute of this video.
Don't know a thing about me. Don't know a thing about me. Don't know a thing about me. And you still don't know a thing about me. I seen your class, and I play by the rules. I'm young, I'm fly, I'm black, so of course I think I'm cool. Geometry is my thing, and physics is just a breeze. So it bothered me last week when you said I should be happy with that C. So I just been wondering lately, trying to figure out just how it could be that you around me so often and still don't know a thing about me.
You see me on TV, marching in the band. Then you flick the channel, and there I am again. Cuffs on my hand, a coat over my head. The news anchor's warning that I'm someone you should dread. The police say I'm a menace, that you should be on the alert. The nightly news recounts all the people that they say I've hurt. The mayor says I'm a threat. Psychologists call me depressed. Bloggers don't know what's up with me, so they make up all the rest. You know, I've been wondering lately, trying to figure out just how it could be that you could see me so often and you still don't know a thing about me.
I live next door to you. You see me on the bus. Sometimes you even tell me, child, just be quiet, just hush. Then I'm out with my boys, 2, 5, or even 10. It's funny when that happens. You don't seem to know me then. I'm just another black boy, a threatening, scary sight, a tall, dark, eerie shadow moving towards you late at night. You know, I've been wondering lately just how it could be that you talk to me so often and still don't know a thing about me.
We hang out on the corner together, holding up the wall. I tell you about my dream, you just want to talk basketball. I pull out my plans, detailing the cities I'll rebuild one day, swearing that the people will know my name across the USA. You tell me to quit fronting. You ask who I think I am, pretending that I'm better than you. You know I really am. You talk about my house, the clothes I wear sometimes. Then you really hit me with what's been on your mind. I've been wondering lately, trying to figure out just how we can be. But we call each other brother, and you still don't know a thing about me.
So the cool thing about this video is these are actually this book is called You Don't Know a Thing About Me. This is a video, but it's actually a book produced by Sharon G. Flake. It actually is an assortment of poems written by young Black boys expressing how they feel. One thing that I want to add and highlight is the last young man, Nas. So he's actually East African, and he actually was speaking about his interaction with American-born Black folks. So that's one thing that when Contessa was talking, I wanted to chime in. So another issue is actually Contessa and Horace. When Horace said that these immigrants are showing up and, you know, because naturally they're going to go to places where jobs are at, but also that's where the American-born Blacks went, right? Like when we had our great migration from the South, we went to those areas too. So they're ending up in the same areas, but they have these cultural tensions, and they're exacerbated because from the outside, folks think they're all the same and they just throw them together without a plan. So keep in mind that if you are running there's two types of affinity classrooms that you might experience. You might experience a newcomer classroom, which is mandated by law under Title III. And depending on where you're at, right? If you're in, let's say Columbus, Ohio, and that's how this came up, everyone, just really quickly. When we did our presentation in Columbus, Ohio, the people stopped us afterwards and said, well, what about the immigrant Black boys? And it didn't calculate at first, or it didn't register. But I thought about it later on. Columbus, Ohio actually has the second largest population of Somalis in America. So Minnesota has the largest population at 40,000 in the actual in the actual Minneapolis city limits. Columbus, Ohio has 20,000 Somali immigrants within the city limits. And we just looked at Michigan, right? Detroit, at the last census, right? The last count, they had 17,700. That was 3 years ago. So it's probably like 20,000 just in the main city area, right? And if you add in Coldwater, you add in Grand Rapids, we have 30,000 Black immigrants. That's not including all the immigrants. It's just Black immigrants, 30,000. So you think about that, and Detroit is 85% Black, and the majority of them are American-born Black. So if you thrust these populations together and they have cultural friction and there's no plan in place, that is yet another distraction for our English language learners, right? So that's just something I wanted to add as I was looking at this video. Because very often we don't highlight the differences, people just throw them all together. Okay, so now that we have highlighted the challenges faced, let's talk about what we can do about it. What's the solution? The solution is affinity groups in the high schools. The likelihood of having a affinity classroom in a high school is very unlikely. I've done high school schedules, middle school schedules. It's likely impossible. Elementary is your best chance to do it because they already have self-contained classrooms anyway. If you're dealing with English language learner populations, just by law, the newcomers can have that class. It's a little bit more difficult when they're not newcomers anymore. But in high school, you're going to have affinity groups. Why are they important? Well, I'm going to circle back to what Mr. Stone said. Mental health for Black children is it's at a crisis level now. So I made sure that Contessa and I, when we were planning, we both highlighted these key numbers that we wanted to lift up. She did, and I'm doing it as well. Look at this. The second leading cause of death for African Americans ages 15 to 24 is suicide. Now let's go back to Mr. Stone's section. The group that commits the highest amount of suicide from ages 5 to 13, which, let me put that in grade levels. That's kindergarten to 7th grade, are African Americans. They experienced a 144% increase in suicides. So between the ages of 5 and 13, then 15 to 24, we're the highest groups that commit suicide. So within the first 25 years of our lives, we're committing suicide at the highest rates. So how do we disrupt that? Well, we notice 15 and 24, that's all the high school years. So what we want is high school affinity groups where kids get to check in daily or weekly. They have just some time where you can just kind of talk to them. So if you look here to the right, again, here's me as a high school assistant principal. I ran a twice a week affinity group. We had a young boy leadership or young men's leadership group. In this particular top picture, you'll see me and one of my colleagues from Cleveland, just happened to be a professor at the University of Michigan, a sociologist. So she joined us and we talked to the boys and she listened to the things that they were saying and she helped me craft interventions. Also, like I said before, it's important for boys Black boys especially, to have role models that can help them. So every week we met on Tuesday and Thursdays. Every Tuesday, we would read articles about famous Black men and things they did to kind of build their self-esteem. Then on Thursdays, we would talk about it. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to tell you that that's a way that you can disrupt the challenges faced that we highlighted earlier. With that being said, let me just go ahead and scoop forward. Okay, let's talk about actually the how and what we're doing. So scheduling strategies for secondary ed, which is 6 through 12. Your affinity groups are either going to be in-school activities or they're going to be out-of-school activities. If you're going to do it in school, and this picture right here is me as a principal, this is where my boys, we separated tables by gender. And so every Wednesday was Principal's Day, and I would sit down with the boys and I would have lunch with them. And we would do silly selfies. They love that. So, but once I got their attention with the selfies, we talked about real things that were affecting them, their concerns, their hopes, their dreams, things that got in the way of those. So that's kind of what it looks like. It'd be an advisory class where I think Kara talked about that earlier, like your 0 hour or your advisory. You can have that in middle school, or you can have lunchtime interventions. Lunchtime interventions are a little bit easier because they don't require any real resources. Sometimes your advisory hours can be a scheduling nightmare, especially if your district mandates a certain usage for those already, so you might not have the flexibility. Out of school time, if you look here at the bottom, here's my boys again meeting after school. In this particular case, we had Coach Dr. E.J. Harrelson, who was the first assistant coach of Wayne State. I think he's now the head coach of Schoolcraft. He also has a doctorate. So he talked to the boys about not having athletics supersede academics. He spoke about how he used his athletics to pay for his bachelor's, his master's, and his doctorate. And he always had a statement to the boys. He said, hey, you all bounce the ball. Don't let the ball bounce you. So he always messaged to them that he said basketball is going to break your heart someday. He said there's going to be a day where you can't play it anymore. You're still going to love it, but you can't play. It's going to break your heart. So he said, have a plan. Leave it before it leaves you. And so those are things. And also just he was an important mentor for them. So they could see themselves in him. So that's what I wanted to say, just as far as the actual how of affinity groups. You're going to set them up those two ways. Okay, there we go. So procedural strategies, really quickly, things that you want to focus on when you set up affinity groups. This is not a resume builder for you. Give me 1 second there where I saw his hand go up. And I also see our time. Really quickly, and Russell, we're actually coming up against the next slide will be the Q&A, so you can ask your question there. So a couple of things. Put students in charge. This is not a resume builder for you. This is not for the adults. This is for our students. So put them in charge. If you see this middle picture here, here's one of my students. We worked on what we call man skills, just basic things like tie and ties. One of my students here, he was raised in a home with the father, and his father taught him how to tie a tie. So we put him in charge of teaching the boys how to tie ties. So there. If you look at the bottom picture, we partner with the local police station, and we took the boys on a field trip to show them that Black folks can be law enforcement as well. That's not anything we should be scared of. We can control the narrative there. All right, next thing, go beyond celebration. Affinity groups should not be simply identity pride, but they should have a connection to your actual goals. So if it's a school-based affinity group, whatever your district's mission statement is, if it is to have this certain amount of students go to college or trade school, then your affinity group should be tied into that. We should be highlighting George Washington Carver. We should be highlighting A. Philip Randolph, those type of things, right? We should even be talking about Ben Carson, Barack Obama, those type of people saying, hey, you can be these folks. Focus on empowerment and allyship. So last but not least, in our affinity groups, we should inform our boys and make them informed of themselves and their strengths and have them go out and recruit allies. Talk to people that don't know about Black boys and tell them what's going on so they can be allies. Kind of a trainer type of thing so we can empower our boys. Okay, at this time, I will hand it over to my colleague, Horace Stone. And this picture right here is me, Horace, and Contessa. Last week after we presented, we had our picture there. So there you go.
Well, thank you, Mr. Fisher. At this time, if the floor is now open, if you have any questions, please ask your questions. I know there was a question from Brother Russell. You could go ahead and speak now, sir.
Hi, and I just wanted to say thanks to you guys for putting on the presentation. It was really informative. I think you really did end up kind of answering my question. I think I heard all three of the speakers today mention creating, archetypes of like healthy masculinity. I think I was wondering what that means to all of you. And I think the main point I would ask that question is, I wonder how you are making sure that you're creating an environment in these affinity groups where you're obviously interested in Black boys. So are you guys making sure that you're creating an environment where you aren't, potentially isolating boys who don't socialize well with other boys for whatever reason? I'm only asking that because I'm wondering, I feel like if I had seen an affinity group like this, I would be really nervous to participate or join it because my experience being gay is different. So I'd be like, okay, this is like a boys club, a men's club. This might be some other avenue to where I feel like I still don't belong. So I wonder if there's other, like, and you mentioned, you did already answer this a little bit. You mentioned George Washington Carver and Barack Obama. Like, I was wondering if, do you emphasize other virtues like maybe curiosity and patience and compassion? Because it's so often where you get Black boys who also do idolize other Black boys. Oftentimes, it might not be George Washington Carver unless they learned it in school. It might be like a rapper like Playboy Cardi or Future or something. And then that creates, this very bro-y environment. Is there like a way you kind of keep that from happening?
Yeah. So I'll jump in there and I'll take that one because I've had these experiences. I've done this for like almost 20 years. So I'll jump in there. So first thing I'm gonna ask you, Russell, is, because I have some inside knowledge here. Who's your favorite presenter?
Who's my favorite?
Yeah.
Probably Contessa. If I had to answer. That's a safe answer, right?
Why is that?
I really like the talk about,
because she's your mom.
She's my mom. I like the disparate.
Okay, there we go.
I like the disparate impact of the disproportionate impact.
Okay, so
I like Horace's as well. I think.
Also, see, I'm dead last. I told you all. See, all right. So I'll jump in there. It depends. So a couple of things that I want to say is, we generally do surveys before we form these to find out what the areas of interest are. So we'll start there. So it's what, again, where I emphasize that it's not what we want it to be, it's what the kids want it to be. The other thing is that we don't mandate that folks participate in these, so they come voluntarily. The other thing is that we don't necessarily conflate. I think we do an injustice to both groups if we conflate race and sexual orientation. So we won't conflate those, because if you blend them together, you may miss some of the individual needs. And so we don't assume that all gay people are Black or all Black people are gay. In this particular case, we're focusing on academic achievement and suspensions, which more so in the Black community. I'm going to be honest, I'm sure that it may happen as well because of their sexual orientation, but it happens more because of their race, how they appear. So in these particular cases, that's what we're focusing on is academic achievement, reduction of suspension, and you know, and it's funny because Mr. Stone and I did quite a bit of work in Seattle, which has one of our larger black gay populations, and we talked to some of their NAACP representatives and some of their what was the other group? I'm sorry, Black Lives Matter. Their Black Lives Matter specifically focuses on queer and LGBTQ black, and they said that their focus was more on the racial discrimination because that's what they experience more. Folks see them as that first. They even talked about the dating apps where potential folks say no black guy need to apply. So things like that. So statistically, the race impacts more. So if we have limited resources, we're going to attack the bigger issue. However, if kids identify and say that that's the real issue, like we happen to have a school that's overwhelmingly the gay black population, they say that's the main thing. And of course, that's what the affinity group would go towards. But generally, that's not in our anecdotal experiences what's going on. Unfortunately,
Right,
I guess
yeah.
we'll just hold it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
yeah,
that.
no problem. We'll hold it right here, everyone, because we're at time. We want to honor your time. So we'll thank everyone. We'll stay on if anybody wants to go further, but I'll officially end the presentation now just because it is exactly, it's at the top of the hour everywhere. But we'll stay on, but we want to thank you all. Yep. So it's officially over, but you can still ask us questions. We're still here. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I think Steve Elam had a question.
He had a comment. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I'm loving the presentation, and I like the way my wife was listening to you. I said, Sean is going to be so politically correct. It was wonderfully done, sir. Way to explain.
Thank you, man. I might have been doing this for a little bit. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
You gotta look good, man. I have opportunity to. I'm gonna see. I'll give you a call, Sean. You need to present at this one particular charter school system because of exactly what's occurring. So I'll give you a buzz.
Okay, perfect. I'll look for that. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Well, that is it. Hey, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. This was really, really helpful. It was really insightful. You vitalized me or revitalized me to take some of this back too. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, folks, let me stop recording here. So I'm going to stop presenting and I'll stop.